I'm Larry Fedoruk, and this is I Was 8. When I started this weekly storytelling podcast, I had no idea we'd spill over into a 5th season. But here we are, another new beginning. And what better way to start than with another heroic tale of growing up in a small Canadian prairie town.
I Was 8, The Lost Episodes. Number 1, The Dray.
What is a dray, even? To me, it always sounded like an expression of coolness. The Dray. Hey, I haven't met that new girl yet. What's she like? Are you kidding? She's the Dray. Ooh, the Dray. That's like the best. It's not an expression of coolness. Although I guess we could try and make it one. A dray is a wagon, basically. How cool is that? A dray is a flatbed with no sides. The dray in our town, though, did have some railings attached to the front of it. It was built on an old car chassis, so it had 4 car tires on rusty rims. It was pulled by a small and ancient Massey Ferguson tractor, driven by Army Little. Army was short for Armand. Dad and most of the grown-ups called him Army. We kids called him Mr. Little, sometimes Mr. Dray, sometimes Dray Guy. Though it was Mr. Little's dray, we called it the town dray, 'cause the town gave Mr. Little a small weekly stipend to haul crap out to the town dump. Oh, and by the way, our sophisticated little prairie town of Waukah, Saskatchewan, didn't even call it the town dump. They called it the refuse yard. Oh, I'm not kidding. The refuse yard. Sometimes, and this is even better, the nuisance grounds. They wouldn't even call their garbage garbage. They were nuisance items, and they went to the nuisance grounds, which of course led to a popular line of discipline from most of the town's parents. Stop your yammering, or I'll haul you out to the nuisance grounds and leave you there. That's why they call it the nuisance grounds, Larry. It's where you go if you're a nuisance. Okay, I'll be good, I promise. I'm not sure exactly what items Mr. Little was charged with hauling out to the refuse yard, but I think it was just basic refuse. If you had something major that was a little heavier, a bigger nuisance, say an old washing machine or something, you personally gave Mr. Little a few bucks on the side, and he hauled it away for you. I guess he was our town's garbage man who also freelanced. I do also remember that our family, of course a lot of my friends' families too, often hauled their own garbage out to the nuisance grounds. You loaded up the trunk, it was 5 minutes by car, like if you'd missed the dray that day or Mr. Little was off for a few weeks, then each household became in charge of getting their garbage to the landfill. Not a bad system, really. I guess it would be harder to do in the big cities today. These days, it's a pain in the butt just to get the trash to the end of the driveway. Can you imagine yourself driving your trash 2 miles out of town? We did. The challenge for Dad on those trips was not to bring back more than he took out. Many is the time Dad returned from the dump with a prize artifact. Hey, can you believe someone threw out this lamp? No, I can't. It is beautiful. Quite spectacular, actually. Look at this chair someone threw out. It's still good. Yes, it is. As a result of Dad's many shopping trips to the nuisance grounds, we had a beautifully decorated garage. Mom just didn't have our eye for valuable refuse. Therefore, these previously enjoyed gems seldomly made it into the house. Dad wasn't the only guy in town doing that, by the way. Some discarded items didn't even make it out of town. Thrown onto the dray on one street, pulled off the dray 2 streets over. I can't believe someone is throwing this out. So we were just a sleepy little town of about 1,000 people, but even on the quietest of days, you could eventually count on the sound of the Massey Ferguson, with slouched over Army Little pulling the creaky wagon up your street. The dray was also a kid transit system. Again, our town was pretty small. You could walk anywhere in about 15 minutes, zip around on your bike, but many kids would just hop onto the dray and ride it around town. This was mostly older kids because you had to be this tall to ride the dray. Now, seriously, if you were too short, one, you couldn't run fast enough to catch up to the dray or be tall enough to pull yourself up onto it. Mr. Little never stopped for you. That wasn't his job. But once you got on, he didn't chase you off either. What did you do today? Oh, I went downtown and then I rode the dray around for half an hour. Ooh, good times. I was 8 when I decided I was old enough and tall enough to try and ride the dray. Now, riding the dray came with one very specific instruction, as told by Ronnie Penniman's older brother Dave, who was in high school. Dave told Ronnie. Ronnie told us, and the word spread throughout the little grades. Never ride the dray all the way to the nuisance grounds. Because if you do, you will never come back. That's why Mr. Little doesn't chase you off the wagon when you jump on. He's hoping you'll ride the dray all the way out of town. Once at the refuse yard, Mr. Little takes out a big sword he keeps on his tractor and chops kids up into small pieces, then scatters them among the nuisance items. Remember Bobby and Annie Krause? Yeah, kind of. Suddenly, last year, they just stopped coming to school, and no one ever saw them around town anymore. Yeah, that's right. According to Dave, they were last seen sitting on the dray as it headed out of town. Wow, the evidence was overwhelming. I didn't see any reason why Ronnie's older brother Dave would make up a story like this, so it had to be true. You might ask, with this valuable nugget of criminal information at my disposal, why would I ride the dray at all? Well, it looked like fun. Other kids did it. As long as you were under the watchful eye of nosy townsfolk who peeked out the window at anything that drove by, you'd be fine. And hey, you gotta live on the edge once in a while, right? Just don't ride out of town if you want to live. One beautiful summer morning, I decided today's the day. Today's the day I'm riding the dray. Today's the day I'm riding the dray. Today's the day I'm riding the... Wait, you know what? To be safe, I'm going to take my BB gun. Somehow things go bad, I could just start pumping BBs into Dray Guy. Not sure if it would stop him, but it would sure slow him down, especially if I got him right in the eye. Also, I went to the garage and got one of my dad's screwdrivers, the big pointy one, tucked it into my belt like a knife. I phoned my friend Ronnie. Ronnie, I'm riding the dray today. I am armed. But if I go missing, tell everyone. So I walked downtown, hung out near the post office. I saw the Massey Ferguson turn the corner and slowly drive by me. I chased the dray. As I got close enough to jump on, I thought, hey, maybe I'm not tall enough to ride the dray. This is higher than I thought. But I was determined. As I got closer, I tossed my rifle onto the flatbed and then grabbed on. I struggled with my little spaghetti arms, trying to pull myself up, sneakers dragging in the dirt. But finally I made it. I was riding the dray. I got myself situated, seated facing backwards, legs dangling, noticing that I shared the space with a small old stove and a few garbage bags. We drove right through town. I waved at a few of my friends. That's right. It's me riding the dray. Saw my idiot friend Philip, so I pretend shot him with my BB gun, and he pretend fell down dead. He was pretty hilarious. Until his mother came out of the drugstore, saw him there lying on the ground, and freaked out. We turned left at the bank, down the street, left at the big maple tree. Cruising up and down a few streets, I was riding the dray. I noticed that Mr. Little was now on the street that led to the road that went to the nuisance ground. Not only that, He was speeding up a bit. Well, time to get off. Yeah, how do I do that? I spent so much time and energy trying to figure out how to get on, I never thought about getting off a moving dray. It was actually pretty high. If I jump off now, I'll likely kill myself. Of course, if I stay on and get all the way to the dump, I'm dead anyway. Wait a minute. There's a stop sign at the highway. You have to cross the highway to get to the road to go to the dump. When he stops, I'll jump off. He's not slowing down. He blew right through the stop sign. Oh no! I'm on the road to the nuisance grounds. I'm on the road to death. Think. Hold on. You'll stop at the dump. I could just jump off then and run. I can run pretty fast. Also, I had a BB gun and a screwdriver. So some pretty good options to continue living. Fight or flight. If I jump off now, certain death. But if I stay till the nuisance ground, at least I have a chance. I stayed on the dray as we drove to the dump, sweating like a cold beer sitting in the sun, or something like that. Boy, that was one long ride. But eventually, we were there. As soon as Mr. Little stopped, I dove off the dray, hit the ground, ran and hid behind a pile of paint cans. I got my BB gun ready and peeked out. Mr. Little was on the dray now, throwing the bags off and eventually pushing the stove off onto the ground. Then he got off and kind of rolled it near a pile of trash. Then he sat on the edge of it, pulled a Mickey of whiskey out of his pocket, took a few swigs. So I got up and started looking around, keeping one eye on Mr. Little and one eye on the nuisance items. Oh, wow. Hey, can't believe someone threw out this end table. I should take this home for Dad. There was a perfect spot for this in our garage. I saw a few glass jars and bottles. I pumped a couple of BBs into them. Just wanted Mr. Little to know the gun was loaded. I also brandished my screwdriver for a few seconds. Then I saw this old beat-up small brown shoe, like a kid shoe. Bobby Krause had brown shoes, I think. I walked over to see if there was still a foot in it. There wasn't. Mr. Little had this permanent half-a-roll-your-own cigarette always dangling out of the corner of his mouth. I watched as he lit it up, smoked it, and another swig of whiskey. He got back on the tractor. Oh no, he's going for his sword. No, he just cranked it up, turned the dray around and stopped. Looked over at me and yelled, "Are you coming?" I have a gun, I have a screwdriver. But he just waited as I got on. This time I sat facing him, and we rode back to town. You know, the Littles lived across town from us, but the tractor and dray ended up on my street. And as we got in front of my house, he stopped, watched me get off, and waved as he pulled away. Kid transit system. Once again, Larry, a Waukau Kid legend. Now, to be clear, I only told Philip and Ronnie about what had happened. And I told it exactly as it happened, as you heard it. Yet, within days, I was getting questions from other kids like, "Did you really see Bobby Krause's head inside a paint can? Did you really have a sword fight with him with your screwdriver? Did you really hold the gun to his head all the way back into town?" Wow. I mean, eventually I had to say to these kids, Yes, I did. When I remember that day, I always wonder why we all chose really, to believe Ronnie's older brother Dave, as opposed to, say, our own common sense, and why we wouldn't just consult, say, our parents, who would have told us that Mr. Krause suddenly took a job in the city and the family moved away. I think it's because a dramatic narrative is always more interesting than the facts. I mean, a wagon drove by my house. That's not cool. But add the scary story. Now, it's the Dray.
Thanks for listening to I Was 8, a weekly podcast voiced, written, and produced by Larry Fedoruk. This podcast is available on most major platforms, or check out the I Was 8 YouTube channel. Larry Fedoruk, that's Fedoruk, can be reached at larryfedoruk37@gmail.com.
From the west, with a BB gun, he's the best. He's a legend in his town and dumb. He's so deadly with his screwdriver. He's a Mr. survivor. He's the one they always call Larry Kid. He's Larry Kid, Larry Kid, oh Larry Kid, oh Larry Kid.
Tonight's CBS episode of Larry Kid is brought to you by Kellogg's.